Hi, today we're interviewing a local martial artist who also happens to be a great friend of mine. His name is Khodaiar and he's been practicing martial arts for many years. Let's hear what he has to say. Hi,
Hello,
how are you doing?
I'm good. How are
Good.
you?
I'm fine too. Are you ready for some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Shoot.
Alright. So, the question that I have is how long have you been doing martial arts?
Well, I did martial arts when I was a kid. I think the first time I started doing martial arts was when before we came to Norway, when we were living in Tehran, and I think I was 6 years old. I did some karate, but like I was too young then. So after that, I took karate up again when we were living in Randaberg, and I must have been 10, I think, and I did 2 years of karate.
2 years of karate.
And
And
that
what club was that?
Randaberg Karate Club,
Awesome.
and that must have been like early 90s. Then I quit because, like, I don't know, I was a kid and had other stuff I wanted to do, and didn't have the patience for karate because you have a lot of repetition and you have a lot of the same stuff you do again and again. And when I was in that certain age, I wanted everything to be like fast and I wanted action, so I quit. But then I kind of regret it. So I started with taekwondo when I was 17.
17.
Yeah, so like from maybe 12 till 17, I didn't do anything martial arts. But then I did that for some years. I did that till I got my black belt, and then I started experimenting with other styles and stumbled upon jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-jitsu.
I did that for a year, and then I moved to study in a different city, and they didn't have jiu-jitsu there. This, like, now jiu-jitsu is everywhere, but this was early 2000s,
Yeah,
so like
different back then.
different back then. And
Was it the Japanese or the
it
Brazil?
was the Japanese style, it wasn't the Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Mm.
But then when I came to Tromsø and I started studying there, I was like, hey, so what am I gonna do? I didn't want to go back to taekwondo because I was very curious about learning other stuff. Like, I came to the conclusion that if to learn as much as possible, you have to try things outside your base. So everybody was speaking very highly of the kickboxing. All right, let's check it out. So I tried kickboxing, and that kind of really changed things for me.
Mm.
And I have been doing kickboxing on and off ever since. I've been kind of like changing between kickboxing and boxing ever since 2005.
Exactly.
So, because when we did the taekwondo, you had a lot of basic stuff. You had the patterns, you had all the basic movements that you would never do in a fight.
Yeah,
And
but all the stances and
all the
balance.
stances, all the difficult moves, and like I like the patterns, but you had 60% basics that were just for the arts, and you had like a 40% orientation. Well, it depended on the club you were training in, but like half the stuff you learned you could use.
Mm.
But then when I came to kickboxing, everything you trained on, everything you worked on, you could actually use that when you were sparring, when you were doing your fighting. The basics were kind of just made to make sure that you could do your attacks, do your combinations. Everything was there for a purpose.
Yeah, so you wanted the practical stuff of it.
I wanted the practical stuff.
Not just the theory behind it, but the practical stuff.
But there was a lot of like there's no, in boxing specifically, there's nothing that is by chance. Everything is there for a reason. If you do your jab in like this, there's a reason you have your shoulder with you. It's not like you don't do your jab like this.
Yeah.
There are no coincidences in martial arts, and with the practical styles, all the basics kind of serve that purpose. So I really fell in love with that. And after kickboxing, because I came from taekwondo, I came from kicking, and I kind of got really curious about boxing. So my kickboxing trainer at that time, Talia, who's probably the trainer I've learned most from, he said like, well, because we were talking about maybe studying in Cuba, and he said, yeah, you should go to Cuba. They'll fix your boxing. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I should do that. So I didn't go to Cuba to study anything. Studying was secondary, and boxing was my primarily purpose for being there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I've done boxing in different clubs, and boxing and kickboxing I've been doing ever since 2005, 6, I think.
Could you list the martial arts that you've been influenced by or practiced?
Okay, yeah, so I've done karate, taekwondo, boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. I did a little bit of Kali Sikaran, a little bit of Krav Maga. And I went back to jiu-jitsu, but then I dislocated my shoulder a couple of times, and I kind of figured it was better to just stay away from that stuff.
Yeah, I understand.
And I have done Thai boxing. I went to Asia to learn Thai boxing because, again, I was very curious about Thai boxing, and I thought like I can learn it here or I can just go to the source. So I was living in Asia for almost a year and a half, and I was moving or switching between Thai boxing in Thailand, and I was going to Indonesia to train boxing. So I was like, I would be a couple of months in each place and then just go back and forth.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that I think covers most of the stuff I've trained.
Practiced, yeah.
Sorry, I should have done it a lot shorter.
Oh, it's okay. No, it's perfect. It's perfect. You're doing great. I just wondered, with all these martial arts that you've been training and all of it, is there a specific technique, style, or concept that you prefer? Like you mentioned a little bit that you prefer like when things are practical, it's not too theoretical, you don't like all this. You like it, but it's not that exciting for you.
Well, so this might not be a short answer either.
No, but that's okay.
Yeah, because when I left Taekwondo, I felt because there were so many techniques you would never use, and because there was so much theory, so much basics, I felt I wanted a more practical style. I wanted to find the perfect style. And after pursuing all the other things, in 2014 I came back to Taekwondo because when I was training with a lot of kickboxers, I wasn't impressed by their kicks. And some aspects of some of the practical styles, especially like in MMA, I felt like there was a lot of sloppy boxing, sloppy kicks. I'm not dissing MMA because like my philosophy is MMA, but I'm feeling like you should build a base and then you should find something else and do it from the ground up. But that's because I haven't been a fan of taking shortcuts myself. So after doing the practical stuff, ironically, I came to the conclusion that, well, if you're not doing the traditional styles, you're going to miss out on some important elements. You're not going to have that depth understanding that you would if you had done karate or taekwondo or like something where you have a very more traditional foundation.
That's extremely cool.
Yeah, so I kind of went the full circle by trying to prove that the traditional styles were outdated. I came to the conclusion that no, you actually have to have that as well. So I'm kind of 50-50. I like what you're training should work.
Yeah.
But then like you should have done it. If it's boring and it's tedious and it's hard and you're like, why am I doing this? Then you're doing something right. There's a saying, I think Bruce Lee said it, but I'm not certain. He said like, I don't fear the person who's trained 1,000 techniques one time. I fear the person who's trained one technique 1,000 times. Awesome. So it would be like, I fear the person who's trained 500 techniques 500 times. No, I'm just joking. Like, kind of in between there. I'm very 50-50. So if you combine traditional styles with something more practical, that I would say is probably, in my experience, the most efficient.
Perfect.
Again, sorry for the
No,
really long answer.
No, it's perfect. This is gold. What would you consider your greatest achievement in martial arts?
That's such a open and vast question.
But if you had to pick something, right?
I would say my greatest achievement is I feel and I hope that I have sent some of the stuff I have learned, I have sent on to some students. And I don't mean just the techniques, because like you can teach anybody to punch or kick. My greatest achievement was to have my students understand not just the technique but the philosophy of martial arts. And like, we don't do this to beat up people, we don't do this for the violence. It's like, what you're doing is try to improve yourself. And I hope if some of my students may be watching this, if my students learn the values that also come hand in hand with martial arts, and that's another very important factor why I like the traditional styles. You get some really good values. You get like the morality. It's kind of, some of it is a little bit outdated maybe, but if you don't have that and you teach really dangerous techniques to people but don't teach them when to use it, how not to use it, how to be able to control themselves, then you're creating something very, very dangerous.
I agree.
So my greatest achievement, I would say, is that I kind of managed to reach, like, mentally try to help some people to learn self-control, learn to be nice. It's important to be nice. It's important to, I always say it's important to be nice all the way up to the point where it's time not to be nice.
Sounds like a good philosophy.
Yeah, always start by being nice, and if that doesn't work, okay, then
move on to the next
turn
step.
to violence. But like, try being nice first.
Yeah.
So I would say sending some hopefully good values to my students.
Perfect. What technique are you demonstrating for us today?
Do you want to guess?
I have no idea. The hammer punch?
No, I was considering the hammer punch or the double inverted hurricane twist kick.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, but that was like, it's too easy. So I'm going for the side kick.
The side kick, yeah.
Not a big super. Yeah, I think if you had taken a guess, that would be the first thing.
Okay, perfect.
So we're doing the side kick.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right. So what I'm gonna demonstrate is the side kick. I love the side kick, and there are a lot of different ways to do the side kick. So I'm gonna show a couple of things with the side kick. So what I like to do when I'm doing the side kick, in a lot of Taekwondo styles, you would chamber it really high, and from here you kind of turn. When I use the side kick as an attack, I don't like to chamber it. If I'm going directly, I like to just make a straight line from me to Michael, so I'm turning my hips as I'm lifting. And that can be also used like an interrupt attack. If he's moving in, I can just bam! I take the shortest line from me to him. So if I'm going here, then here, that takes too much time. I can do that as well, but if I'm doing it, I prefer to just lift and go at the same time. So as soon as I lift my leg, I'm turning this foot, and I want to turn it all the way so my heel is pointing to Michael. Alright, so that's one way to do it. The other way that I like to use defensively is just here I might chamber it a little bit more. So if he's coming in and I want to move away, I lean here, and here. So I kind of wait for my opponent to come in and I put it here. I always try to aim either for the side, or if I get if they're open in the middle, I try to aim for the solar plexus. So as soon as I'm here, I'm leaning back, and I see he's coming in with a jab or an attack. Bam! Yeah, but there, as I said, there are a lot of different ways to do the side kick. Some people prefer to go all the way and chamber it every time. But you will telegraph a little bit more if you're chambering it than just turning. Boom! Alright, so that was just a little demonstration of the side kick for you.
Thank you.